Let's talk about something that sounds a little wild. We're going to dive into a pretty fascinating connection between the characters we get to know in video games and, believe it or not, one of the biggest real-life decisions a person can make, starting a family.
So let's just get right to it, the big question. Can that bond you feel, that genuine affection you have for a character on a screen, actually spark a desire to have a baby in the real world? It sounds like something out of a movie, but this is exactly what researchers wanted to find out.
You know, this whole thing kicked off because of a real-world puzzle, especially over in China. On the one hand, you had fertility rates dropping. Young adults just weren't as interested in having kids. But at the exact same time, they were pouring hours and hours into virtual parenting games, raising digital children. So you've got this huge disconnect, right? And that's what made scientists go, what's going on here?
So how could this possibly work? I mean, how do you get from a video game character to wanting a real family? Well, researchers laid out a potential psychological blueprint, a kind of step-by-step journey from the game screen to our real-life feelings. Let's walk through it.
Okay, so it all starts with something called game concentration. And you know this feeling. It's when you're so deep into a game that the rest of the world just melts away. Hours feel like minutes. You're not just controlling a character anymore. You feel like you are that character. This total immersion, that's the crucial first step.
So once you're completely lost in that world, the connection can get deeper. It can grow into what the study calls an identification friendship. This is the point where that character stops being just pixels on a screen and starts to feel like an actual friend. You start to trust them, you feel like they've got your back. It's a real emotional bond.
And that friendship can then morph into something called a parasocial relationship. Now I know, it sounds a little academic, but the idea is simple. It's a one-sided relationship that still feels incredibly real and emotionally important to you. Think about how a fan might feel about their favorite celebrity. It's that kind of one-way connection, but with a game character you spent dozens of hours with.
And here's where it gets really interesting. The researchers split this parasocial bond into two separate lanes. You've got the thinking path, that's the logical part, where you're analyzing the character's goals and what makes them tick. And then you have the feeling path, and that's all about emotion. It's the empathy, the affection, the genuine caring you have for them. So here it is, the entire roadmap they laid out. You start with that deep game concentration. That leads to a feeling of real friendship. That friendship builds into this deeper parasocial bond, which then splits into those two paths, the head and the heart. And the theory was that one or maybe both of these could actually lead all the way to a real-world desire to have kids.
This whole setup creates this amazing psychological showdown. Which of these paths is actually strong enough to cross that bridge from the virtual world to the real one? Is it our logical thinking brain, or is it our emotional feeling heart? The head versus the heart.
And that is the million-dollar question, isn't it? When it comes to something so real and so profound, what kind of virtual connection actually has the power to move the needle? And boom, the answer could not have been clearer. The feeling path, the one built on empathy, affection, all that emotional stuff, it had a significant, measurable link to fertility desire. And the thinking path, the logical one, nothing. No significant effect at all. The heart won, hands down.
The study's own conclusion really just says it all. The connection between playing these games and actually wanting kids happens almost entirely through our feelings, not our thoughts. It's the emotional journey that truly matters.
So why, right? Why was the emotional path so powerful when the logical one just fizzled out? Well, the researchers have a really cool theory for this. They call it the emotional compensation hypothesis. Basically, the idea is this. The real world can be stressful, high pressure, and complicated. But in a game, forming these deep emotional bonds is low risk, it's safe, it's controllable. And so these virtual relationships can kind of act as psychological compensation. They fill a need for connection and caregiving that might be harder to find in our busy real lives.
So let's break that down. These virtual bonds basically create a psychological safe zone. They give us a space to practice caring for someone without all the high stakes of the real world. This can actually protect us or buffer us from some of our real-life stress. It's a way to fill up our emotional tank, you know? It recharges us with positive feelings and lets our imagination run wild about what being a parent could be like. And it's that positive feeling, that emotional energy, that forges the link to wanting a family, not some kind of rational pros and cons list.
So when we step back and look at all this, what does it really mean for us, for our digital second lives?
The big takeaway, the really crucial point here, is that the connections we make in these virtual worlds are not just a game. They aren't trivial. They're real, emotionally. and they can be powerful enough to actually reach out from the screen and shape our real-world attitudes and even our deepest personal desires.
And that really leaves us with one last big question to think about. If our virtual bonds can influence something as fundamental as whether we want to start a family, what else is being shaped by our virtual lives? What other real-world feelings and decisions are being quietly influenced by the friendships we're making on the other side of the screen?